I want Star Trek's origin movie even more after watching Black Mirror's USS Callister. Black Mirror has always excelled at exposing the dark underbelly of technology, but in Season 4's USS Callister, it did something even more unexpected. It made me long for a Star Trek origin movie. Yes, a true Starfleet beginning story. Because as dark and twisted as USS Callister is, its very premise, a digital Starfleet-like fantasy twisted by human ego, actually highlights just how optimistic and revolutionary the real Star Trek is, especially when viewed through a modern, cynical lens. Watching USS Callister didn't make me hate Star Trek, it made me appreciate it more. And it made me realize we've never really seen how it all began. USS Callister is a nightmare version of Star Trek's legacy. First, let's talk about what USS Callister is. The episode is a satirical horror story wrapped in the glossy aesthetics of classic Star Trek. It follows Robert Daly, a brilliant but socially awkward programmer who is co-founder of a gaming company. Daly is the lead developer of a virtual reality MMO game, and he secretly uses stolen DNA to create digital clones of his coworkers, trapping their sentient copies inside a Star Trek-like universe where he plays captain of the USS Callister. It's a sadistic fantasy where Daly can finally be the respected hero he feels denied in real life. To fans of Star Trek, the episode is an uncomfortable mirror. Daly's Callister universe is modeled after a fictional TV show within the Black Mirror world, a clear homage to Star Trek, the original series, down to the colorful uniforms, the spacefaring optimism, and the adventure of the weak feel. But here, all that utopian charm is corrupted by tyranny. Daly, the Captain Kirk of the story, uses his power to subjugate and control. It's a dystopian twist on what Trek was meant to be, a symbol of hope, unity, and progressive values. Yet beneath the darkness lies a powerful reminder of what Star Trek stood for and how essential that optimism still is in today's fractured world. Star Trek needs to reclaim its origin story. For decades, Star Trek has explored bold futures and distant planets. It's taken us from the Earth-Romulan War to the 32nd century. But what it hasn't done, not in any full, satisfying way, is show us how the Federation actually began. We've seen glimpses in Enterprise and scattered pieces in shows like Discovery, but the full mythos of how humanity overcame its darkest era, reached for the stars, and built the United Federation of Planets? That remains untold. And after USS Callister, I want it more than ever. Because when you watch a twisted mirror of Trek like USS Callister, it underscores just how radical Star Trek's values were and still are. Gene Roddenberry didn't just imagine ships and phasers, he envisioned a future where poverty was eradicated, war was mostly behind us, and exploration was the new frontier. After the horrors of the 20th century, this was a daring vision. And in a time when so much science fiction is bleak, cynical, or dystopian, that vision is still rare. Black Mirror thrives on darkness. Star Trek thrived on hope. That contrast couldn't be clearer than in USS Callister. So what better time than now to show how that hope was forged? What a Star Trek origin movie could look like. Imagine a Star Trek movie that begins not in the stars, but on a broken Earth. The late 21st century, ravaged by the aftermath of World War III, climate disasters, and political collapse. Cities are in ruins, nations no longer trust each other, and humanity teeters on the edge of self-destruction. We've heard about this era in Trek canon, the eugenics wars, the rise of Khan Noonien Singh, and the nuclear holocaust that followed. But this time, we see it. Enter Zefram Cochrane. Not the charismatic old legend from TOS, or even the drunk visionary from First Contact, but the real man, flawed, selfish, maybe even morally gray, who invents warp drive not to save humanity, but to escape it. We follow Cochrane's story not as a sanitized myth, but as a gritty, character-driven journey. He builds the Phoenix not out of idealism, but desperation. And yet, when the Vulcans arrive, answering his warp signal with a peaceful first contact, something in him changes. And in that moment, a spark of hope ignites. The movie wouldn't end with the Federation's founding. It would lead to it, showing how Cochrane's flight inspired a generation of thinkers, dreamers, and diplomats. It could chronicle the first human-Vulcan alliances, the rocky beginnings of Starfleet, and the fierce debates over what humanity's future should be. It could show us the founding charter being signed, not with fireworks, but with fear, uncertainty, and the cautious optimism that maybe, just maybe, we can be better. It would be Star Trek's version of Batman Begins. Or better yet, Casino Royale, a stylish, mature, emotionally resonant reset that gives new meaning to everything that follows. We've had decades of Trek stories set in the middle of the Federation's golden age. Now it's time to see how the gold was smelted. USS Callister shows us what happens without Star Trek's ideals. USS Callister isn't just a parody, it's a warning. Without Star Trek's ideals, a spacefaring society is just another playground for tyranny. Dally doesn't believe in diversity, equality, or consent. He believes in domination, in being the hero of a universe that worships him. His digital world looks like Star Trek, but it lacks its soul. And that soul, the belief that people can overcome their worst instincts, is what makes Star Trek timeless. By contrast, Dally is a product of our age. He's brilliant but isolated, outwardly meek but inwardly resentful. He uses technology not to connect, but to control. He creates a fake world instead of changing the real one. He is, in many ways, what the worst of humanity becomes when given power without accountability. Watching USS Callister, you don't just recoil from his cruelty, you feel the void where a better set of values could have been. And that makes you yearn for the real thing. It makes you long to see how we got from Dally's world, a society where people are exploited, bullied, or ignored, to Roddenberry's world, where diversity is embraced, conflict is resolved through diplomacy, and leadership is earned through wisdom. Star Trek's optimism is its most radical weapon. There's something almost rebellious about believing in a better future today. In an era of climate dread, political polarization, and tech-induced anxiety, it's easy to scoff at utopias. But Star Trek never promised utopia. It promised the struggle to reach one. That's what a Star Trek origin movie could explore, not perfection, but perseverance. Not shiny starships, but the people who dared to dream of building them. It could be raw, messy, and morally complex, just like our world, but with a clear arc toward progress. That's a story no other sci-fi franchise can tell quite like Star Trek. Star Wars has origins steeped in myth and mysticism. Dune is about power cycles and destiny. But Star Trek is about choice. About choosing to rise above fear. About building something new, not just rebelling against the old. That story, the origin of the Federation, of Starfleet, of the Prime Directive itself, would resonate now more than ever. Especially when contrasted with the twisted Trek of USS Callister, where power is used to dominate rather than uplift. Reclaiming the dream. It's no surprise that USS Callister ends not with violence, but with rebellion. The digital clones trapped in Dally's fantasy don't defeat him by outgunning him, they outthink him. They cooperate, they strategize, and they choose freedom. In a way, they embody real Starfleet values. Even in their digital prison, they find a way to come together. It's one of Black Mirror's rare hopeful endings. But it only works because we,